Welcome to the Bearded Finisher Podcast, your one-stop show for all things finishing and coatings. Your host, Zach, and a variety of industry experts will guide you through the art of perfecting your finishing and business game. From seasoned pros to fresh faces, get ready for tips, tricks, and trends to elevate your knowledge and business to the next level.
What is going on, everybody? We're back for another episode. Today we've got Chris Garibay, and Chris is with Santint. What's going on, Chris?
How are you, Zach? How are you, bud?
Man, I'm doing good. I appreciate you coming on, jumping on the show with me. It's been a little bit crazy today here with all this nutso weather. Where are you guys out of?
We're out of Chicago.
Chicago, okay.
Suburb of Chicago, but most people aren't going to know where Glendale Heights, Illinois is, but out of Chicago, suburb of Chicago.
Yeah, okay. I know I've heard that in a movie or two.
Maybe. I've never heard of it. I watch a lot of movies. I've never heard of Glendale Heights. I mean, when I applied, I was like, man, I had to look it up on Google, and I was like, oh yeah, it's out of the way a little bit.
So all this shit that we're getting right now is headed right your direction. I mean, the rain, hail. So, you'll probably see it in a day or two. So get ready for that.
Weather changing in Chicago so often, you don't even realize it.
Yeah, I don't even know how you guys, it changes more than it does down here. It's crazy. So Santint, I know we've kind of talked about, you and I were talking offline a little bit. For those of you that don't know Santint, they do colorant dispensing machines for making colors. Distributors will have them most of the time. Sometimes manufacturers will use them. Everyone's seen them. You go into SW, they got the tint machines behind the counter, Ben Moore, doesn't matter. And Chris, what is your role at Santint?
I'm the director of sales and operations within Santint. I've been with them a little under 3 years. We have three major verticals here in the U.S., and it's architectural, automotive, and industrial, with automotive really carrying the lion's share of that business.
I mean, automotive carries it's nuts at how small the automotive market is, but how big it actually is. There's just, there's so much to it, but it's like everything's the same color. It's all Ford, Chevy, and there's not a whole lot of craziness to it, but it's massive.
Well, I'm going to throw something out there. Like, for example, Axel Nobel has more than 2 million colors on the automotive side. And can you imagine trying to match that? And so I came from the architectural space. This automotive industry is very new to me. I'm trying to figure it out as I go along, but it's an incredible space. So you have, so just think about your average vehicle. What will happen is maybe 1,000 Honda CRVs are dipped in and painted one color based on one specification of a formula. And then the next 1,000, because you're missing one of the raw goods, but it's matched still pretty close, like gun sheet metal, for example. Well, now that has a slightly different composition of the formula that's dipped in. And so when you get into an accident 2-3 years down the line, you have to match to that specific formula, right? That specific concoction of a formula with environmental conditions factored in, right? So I'm from Chicago. We get rain, we get snow. There's a lot of things that affect a color in a way that you wouldn't get that in an automotive, in architectural paint, right? Your house stays pretty consistently 65, 85, depending. And it's it's incredibly complex.
It's nuts. So how old are you, Chris?
I'm 39.
39. All right. So where did you grow up at? Are you original Chicago kid, or did you grow up somewhere else?
Chicago, born and raised. I like to tell people, God willing, I'll die here, right?
I mean, I know the comeback to most of that would be with Chicago. That seems like should be fairly easy.
Yeah, I mean, I moved for a while. Okay, so here's what's funny. So I lived, um, from when I was born to um, right just post college in the house I brought from the hospital, right, and then a couple years later I moved maybe like 20 blocks south, um, on the same street, you know. And now, I mean, I'm
That's
a little bit
crazy.
further south, almost to the edge of Chicago. But I love the city. It's got a great culture. It's got a great scene. In the media, like, oh yeah, it's bad in Chicago. It's the same five communities that Chicago as a whole has not really invested in. And so, Nas likes to say the drugs kept the hood from starving, right? So, how do we expect those communities to change without investment? Um, and so, hopefully down the line, somebody's going to come in and really invest in these areas, bring jobs, bring opportunities, and you'll see these communities change overnight. But it's going to take some bold leadership from the city to make that decision and really commit to those resources.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it's like here in Dallas. There's areas that not to go to, and
Zach, at any point, if I'm a great tour guide. I'll
I
take you to all
mean,
the fun places in Chicago. Because you have your touristy points, and you want to visit those. Those are incredible. The architecture tour. I mean, I don't. I'm not getting paid for it, but that architecture tour in Chicago, fantastic. I've gone at least half a dozen times, and it's different every time, and it's amazing every time. So anytime somebody comes, we're going to the architecture tour. You got to put that on your list.
oh
And
man,
obviously
I'll have
deep
to remember
dish,
that.
even though the our standard Chicagoan doesn't really do deep dish, but you got to do it because it's a thing, right?
Yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, it's pizza. All pizza. Any pizza is my addiction. Thin, thick, Chicago, New York, doesn't fucking matter. As long as it's pizza, I'm in.
Yeah, no, it's. But there's like these little small joints that you got to make sure you visit. These little small Chicago gems, right? Like some historical pieces within the city. I mean, they call it the second city because it was burnt down and then it was rebuilt to what it is today. And I've been to Brazil, China, Spain, and a few other countries, right? And man, Chicago's home. you know.
That's awesome though. I mean, that's one place. I mean, I've been to the airport numerous times, but I have never spent any tourist time or any time in Chicago. It's one of the places that's growing up in Oklahoma. It's like, why didn't you go to Chicago? You went to St. Louis or anything around there, but never just made it to Chicago. It's on my list to go. My wife loves it in Chicago.
Been to Fort Sill in
Oh, in Oklahoma? Yeah,
Oklahoma.
you're not
That's
missing
about
much.
it.
There's just, I mean, that's probably 75% of what's there. There's Oklahoma is very, or, go to OU. That's about it. So grew up in Chicago. Did you, after high school, did you go to college or did you go straight to work?
So I went to college. So graduated in 2004 from pretty good high school in Chicago. Went to University of Illinois in Champaign Urbana. Um, and then 2008 happened, right? And luckily, I did Teach for America for a little over a year, right? And that was an interesting experience. So Teacher America's the concept is they take the top quartile of students within a college campus and then they bring them to teach in an inner city school with the idea that hey, these top talented students are going to make a significant impact in their local communities via this program. So for its faults, the program was an incredible experience for me. I learned a lot. I came into the program pretty arrogant, and I left so incredibly humble. Um, and it's left a pretty lasting impact on how I view education, how I view my contributions to the community. Um, and if it's constant, like when I think about it, I'm like, man, am I doing enough? am I doing enough in the communities for which I live and for which I serve? And sometimes yes, sometimes no. You just gotta rein it back in.
Where did you go teaching on? So I'm assuming, was your degree, I mean, did you get a degree in teaching or something else?
Nope, absolutely not. It didn't matter the degree, so the program doesn't take any sort of, it doesn't factor degree whatsoever. But it's just like you train for, over the course of a summer on teaching fundamentals, if you will. And then you have seminars as you go along. So it's trial by fire teaching, if you will.
That's sink or swim, baby. You get thrown in.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's hard to say that I wasn't anything more than a glorified substitute, with the exception that, like, okay, well, I had to develop curriculum and I had to do these other things that, but it was drink through a fire hose. It was challenging. But at the end of it, my students had grown over 2 years in math and about a year and a half in reading. So, I mean, and one of my personal stories is we had a student who came into my class and he was reading at a second grade level. I taught fifth grade, self-contained, reading at a second grade level. He was so far behind. And obviously this resulted in behavior issues in the classroom. By the end of it, he was put on a path, so the IEP, individual education plan, to get him caught up. So I think that was a really big win. And I hope that he's doing well in his life. And I read, what's funny is maybe a couple of years ago, I ran into one of my students. Like, she was working at one of the breakfast joints. I was like, oh my God, am I that old that I'm running into my students that are in part of the workforce now,
Welcome to the old man club.
that was a hard pill to swallow. It's hard. I mean, I got white hair on my face now.
So did you travel outside of Chicago any for that, or did you stay there?
No, I was within Chicago.
Okay.
That was kind of a condition. I was like, I'm going back home, man. I don't want to go anywhere else.
So what year did you graduate college?
2008.
2008 college.
It was a great time to graduate, by the way.
I mean, everything was probably pretty cheap.
It's pretty cheap, but it was smack dab in the middle of the recession, And so following Teach for America, I was like, okay, left that program and was trying to find something else. And, that was in 2010-ish, right? 2010-ish. And there was just nothing around. So I'm like, man, what do I do? So I'm like, you know what? Screw it. I'm joining the Army. So I did. In my case, it was the National Guard, right?
Okay.
And I did public affairs. And that was very interesting experience, and learned a lot. Once again, another humbling experience in my life. I don't know where the hell I developed an arrogance, right? Poor kid from Chicago, born and raised. What are we doing here? But I had a chip on my shoulder for no reason, just because maybe I was smarter than my peers, and that's about it. The bar was real low. And so,
I mean, there's a little bit of American arrogance. I would say that's in existence.
Yeah, I mean, you watch the old Ronald Reagan videos, and you're like, oh man, I'm pumped. Yeah, let's go. So, yeah, but you come across guys from all walks of life, and I had one of the guys when I was basic training, had his own business and was just kind of like, man, I don't know if this is going to survive, so I'm just trying to do something to keep us afloat. Other kids that are just like, oh, I just graduated high school. I'm like, man, I can't even relate to you, dude. I was 24 at the time and I couldn't relate to that,
24 in the National Guard. So did you do a 2-year or a 4-year term in there?
6.
You did 6 years in the National Guard. So was it all full-time, or were you reserve?
No, I was in a reserve capacity, although I was activated a couple times. So I did 6 years, but then I extended. So I deployed to Gitmo. That was an interesting experience.
I can imagine.
You at the time, it was the 9/11/5 that were in the process of, going through their court cases. And what did that look like? It was just an interesting experience. Close enough that I was like, I could see them, and I'm like, man, that's insane.
Yeah, that's a little like bone chilling right there.
There was an instance where, so during the once again, the proceedings had just started after being halted for 2 years, and there was an instance that was brought up. Basically, was the detainees had said that they were being tortured and whatever. And the Red Cross has an office there, right? While I'm not there, I wasn't there to see it. It's highly unlikely that would have happened in that space with the Red Cross in that space, right? That they can report something to, that sort of thing. So they're saying, "Oh, I'm tortured. I can't sleep. I hear vibrations." That sort of thing. Okay, sure. And so they're in the middle of these proceedings, and finally the government goes up and like, "Well, do you sleep at all while you're here?" And like, "Yeah, we sleep." "Do you dream?" "No." Or he's like, "Yeah, I dream." "Do you dream about the 2,997 people that you killed?" And so, objection. And so it's,
God,
that was an incredible. Wow, yeah.
that's
And
I mean,
I did that for a year, and it's just you get to view a different side of the military, you get to view a different side of how the world operates.
I can imagine. And that kind of reminds me of when you're talking about that lawyer talk. I've had to do jury duty one time, and I got sucked into a federal case, murder trial, and talking about some messed up stuff. I mean, you're seeing dude burned another dude alive. You're seeing pictures of like charred bodies, and the whole objection and the comments that the lawyers make. And I'm like, I mean, it's double-sided. Like, that was something that I don't wish anyone has to go through, but it does give you another perspective. But also on the fact of, like, lawyers are some pretty savvy, quick thinking sons of guns, because they're up there talking and they just come up with these little one-liners, and everyone in the courtroom's like, "Oh," and I'm like, man, these guys are quick. These guys got to be quick on their feet.
Well, if I can paint the scene, right? So here we are, where you're in the middle of a desert valley within Cuba, right? And in that valley, you have a, like, it's like just a random building, right? With barbed wire fences all around it. And here you are, you have like almost like a place where you can view behind some plexiglass, and then down below that you have rows of lawyers, and then one of the 911-5, another row, 911-5, one, all the way up to KSM, Khalil Sheikh Mohammed, who's right in the front. And a good portion of them have their Arabic guard, but they also have the like a camouflage jacket. Well, that's weird. Well, you can choose to wear whatever you want, but why is it that you wear that specific article of clothing? It tells me that you're still in the fight, right? At least that gives me the impression that you are still in the fight. So, it's to plan something that sophisticated. It takes a lot of thinking about how that works, right? And so, I suspect, right, this is me speaking. I can't speak on behalf of the military, right? But it gives me the impression that's, that stuff like that goes into their thought process. But
I mean, yeah, they would have to be so methodical. I mean, I would couldn't disagree with your comment there or your thought. That makes perfect sense.
I haven't kept track of where they're at, if they're still getting. I mean, it's been who knows how many years at this point. Since 9/11, right? And since they've been detained, it's 20 years at this point. I have no idea where that court case is at. I left, get one. I was like, I'm gone. Bye.
And that just made me feel really old because we are quite a ways out from that. And I remember I was a freshman in college.
I was a sophomore in high school. And so where I went to school, I was in the middle of just south, in downtown, just south of, the Sears Tower. And you're just sitting there. And then I took the train home, right? So I'm like, man, I'm going to take this train home. And, is this tower going to fall on me? Right. And all these irrational thoughts, you just don't know what the hell's going on. But it was, I remember feeling terrified. But what's funny is I remember the art teacher. I was in art when the first planes hit, right? I was in art, and she rolls in the cart, right? And then she puts it on the TV, and she's like, oh, this is history. You need to watch this. And that seems like a pretty shared experience. Like your teacher's just like, look what's happening.
Yep. Yeah. I feel like everyone knows that. It's like something that, our generation will probably never forget. Like that's just something that they'll be burned into our brains forever. That's crazy. So so college, teaching, National Guard. When you decided, all right, I'm done with the National Guard. Thank you guys. And thank you for your service, by the way. What did you do after that? What was after the National Guard?
Let's backtrack, right?
Okay.
You're doing it in conjunction, right? So in 2012, is when I started my civilian career with. So you're doing National Guard, just do your civilian career. That's when I started with Sherwin-Williams.
Okay. So you're doing the National Guard in reserves, and then 2012 is when you started with SW. Right.
So I started with their manager training program, and you're the multi-tool of a store at that point, So open up the store, close the store. You got to do the inventory. You're like the most reliable person behind the store manager at that point.
Yeah, that manager trainee position. It's a great pro. I mean, I've never been in it, but I've known some guys who've gone into it. Like, there's a lot of guys in the industry. I'm trying to think of how to word this. So back in the day, my dad was in the restaurant business. And if you were a restaurant owner of any chain, your goal was to get a Fridays manager, because they had like the ultimate system. And if you went through management training at Fridays, you were like a hot commodity. You could pretty much go to any restaurant that you wanted. And like when I got into the painting world and you start following it and see it, like that kind of to me is how the SW training program was. Because I mean, you go into the management training program and you pretty much write your ticket to, and if you want to stay in distribution or if you want to go into sales, I mean, you've got a clean, I would say, express lane pass to get into that amongst a lot of other people that may be trying to do that. Is that something that you witnessed firsthand?
Yeah. I mean, it's in a lot of the, like, couple things happened during my time at Sherwin, right? So you would see that people would get poached from Sherwin to Benjamin Moore, and then there was a big Valspar exodus in Chicago for a while. So it was like, I think it was like 12 or 15 Sherwin folks that were store managers and sales reps, and then they left, and this was when Valspar was separate. It was its own company before Sherwin eventually absorbed them. but it was a big deal. It was like everyone was like, oh my god. I mean, um,
I feel like the same thing happened on the West Coast too with Kelly Moore. Like there was like something happened and there was a ton of SW guys in the Texas and California market, and they all went to Kelly Moore and stayed for a good while. And you know, it ended up about like the Valspar deal. It just turned around and they all turned around and went back once Kelly Moore went belly up here recently.
right. No, I think they dissipated. Ended up dissipating. I don't know if anybody stayed there long term on the Valspar side. And then there was another exodus, and folks went to Bear at that point. Um, and some of them are still there. If I remember, kind of keep in touch with some of those contacts. Though I think Bear was a little bit more permanent um, for those folks than it was for the Valspar and Benjamin Moore exodus as well. Benjamin Moore. So Bear, Benjamin Moore, those two stayed pretty long term. Still there.
Still there. So, but yeah, those are the two that you kind of remember as, you know, a pretty big swath of employees went that direction.
Yeah.
So give us a little background on your SW career. Manager trainee for how long before you went into your own store?
I mean, they push people up pretty quickly. So, you know, I was with Sherwin a total of 5 years. Um, and you know, after a year, they'll put you in a small store, and then you're there and you kind of compete for a larger store. And then you're there, you'll compete for a larger store. And then at that point, there seemed to be some crossroads. So some people would go sales rep, some people would go to larger stores, but they at least wanted you to have that store manager experience before you became a sales rep. Um, and so, you know, I stayed at the store, went to a small store just north of Chicago, and then was moved to a pretty busy store in the middle of like an up and coming gentrified neighborhood in Chicago. Logan Square is the community, and so, you know, it's funny because that's where I ended up after the 6 weeks training. That's the store that I ended up, and then that's where I would finish my career at Sherwin. So it was like almost like a full circle kind of thing. So
That seems pretty rare though from guys that I've talked to in SW, and correct me. And it may just be when you get into the sales world and the management, but like I've known some buddies through my time in the painting world who, you know, you only get so many moves in a district, and then it's like you got to go to another district. Like you got to leave, and that's it. Like,
yeah, it's one of those. If you want your career to progress, you got to move. You know, and I don't know if it's one of those situations where they value like, hey, you know, let's say you go from Ohio to Detroit or Detroit to Chicago, you bring a different outlook, right? You kind of bring in fresh blood, a fresh set of eyes. And it's been successful for them. I mean, you see it, they continue to grow, you know. In Chicago, I believe when I started, they had maybe, you know, 85, 90 stores. By the time I left, we were at like 110. You know, I mean, it just continued to grow monstrous. And it's their products, which are incredibly solid. It's their consistency in customer service, right? So, like, I know that if I go to one store, I'm going to get the same level of service and with the same level of products, with the same pricing at another store, and I don't have to guess, you know.
yeah.
And so,
Well, I mean, it's the yeah, like you said, the consistency, and it's that training program that you went through, the manager trainee program, and all the managers are going to treat you the same, and for what they do, their model works perfect versus, I mean, PPG never could really get it kicked off. But for Benjamin Moore, for instance, it's a hard comparison because every Benjamin Moore is independently owned and operated. They just sell the paint. Like they own their own store. They're not a corporate store. So pricing structure, what products they're carrying, like the consistency that SW brought to the painting world was like game changing, and no one across the country, it doesn't matter if you're in Charlotte, North Carolina, or Ogden, Utah, you're going to get the same products. I mean, they're going to carry them.
What's new, what's kind of, well, maybe not new, right? And honestly, I haven't done the history on the entire thing, but an observation from this point of view at this point, right, is there is consolidation now, right? So when I was at Sherwin, there's, oh God, it was a couple JC Lick stores, right? And they had like 5 or 6. I mean, now they're up to 21, and that has brought some consistency in that market because they have the same products, they have the same pricing, and that ownership, that leadership is, I think, is important and very competitive for Benjamin Moore. Now, on the paint store side, and you have the hardware side, which is a completely different beast altogether. But I don't think they sell a whole bunch of gallons out there, or buckets, just gallons to paint a room. So it's not necessarily as important.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That it is interesting though. JC Lick did it. Spectrum's doing it. There's a couple guys in the Northeast that are starting to, like, you're seeing the guys that really honed in on paint distribution are now kind of saying, I'm going to dip my toes into the hardware side. And I've known a couple of them that have done it. I'm really good friends with the owners of Spectrum and known them forever. And it's a whole nother world. Like, they get into it and they're like, this is nothing like paint.
Right. But there's also some value in the protection that a buying group offers, right? So part of who we deal with, right, is you have your Orgills, you have your Ace Hardwares, Do It Bests, and those structures offer a lot of support. They bring competitive pricing, they bring you some competitive offerings from different vendors, a whole slew of vendors that, it's really hard to capture when you're a small company, right?
It is
just 1 or 2 stores. You get some pricing, but it's not at the level that these large buying groups offer in terms of an umbrella. And so it's amazing to me, now coming to this side of the business, it's as an equipment supplier, just to see how that it does. And, we try to be good partners to our vendors because we deal with the large paint manufacturers. They're our bread and butter. But we also get to, do that support at the local paint store level or the local hardware store level, and offer them those great products at competitive pricing,
Yeah. So let's kind of dive into, we've got a good history. Did you go anywhere after you left SW? Or was it straight to Santint?
Yeah,
or did you have
I was at Coca-Cola, right?
Okay.
No. So I did a little stint at Coca-Cola, which helped me at Santint.
You tried to get out.
That was my one to get out. And so one of my customers was Home Depot. And I was crushing it at these Home Depot stores, man. Like, it was at that moment where they were transitioning their front end, right? So it wasn't just these line of registers. They were transitioning to the, I can't think of this.
The self-checkout.
Right?
Okay.
Right. So I'm like, I'm there as an account manager for Coca-Cola. I was like, hey, can I put a machine there? One of those refrigerators. Can I put a fridge there? They're like, yeah, sure, why not? Go ahead. And I was just stuffing them in there. I was like, yeah, this is how I'm gonna win, right? And at that same time, one of the Bear folks was there. He was one of their inside managers. He's like, hey, did you ever consider coming back to paint? And I was like, I told him no the first time. I was like, nah, I'm good. I don't want to go back to paint.
I'm done with that one.
There was an opportunity. Right. And then there was an opportunity the second time. And at that point, I was like, a little not too pleased with how my trajectory was going with Coca-Cola. I wish that would have turned out differently. But we'll revisit that in a minute. it just, I was like, all right, well, I guess I'm back with Bear, right? To get back in paint via Bear. And that was, an, and that was interesting. I did property management. Um, I was a property management rep um, for them. And Bear's got some great products. They got some incredible products.
Oh, doing coatings for property management, man. Property management in the coatings world, that like might as well be used car sales, man. That one's cutthroat.
Oh yeah, because it's all price. They're like all price,
Yes.
But it's not even just price, right? And it's an issue of like they need to turn those apartments quickly. And so if your paint doesn't touch up, you're out. Like zero margin of error. Like I need to be able to come in, feather this hole that somebody made, and then turn this apartment because I only have 48 hours. I want to collect rent. And so that was an interesting landscape. Kind of how Bear was, trying to model after the paint store via Home Depot. And I don't know if, I think it was still in its early stages of development. There's still a lot of meat on that bone. And, I'm hoping that it works for them.
Yeah. I mean, I think so. And I think like these guys like JC Licht in a big town and these paint distributors who've gone into the hardware model. I mean, for these smaller towns where SW can put in a store and not be too worried if it makes a ton of money, they're okay. It's SW. You've got these smaller guys that there's not enough meat on the bone for a Benjamin Moore store in a town of 10,000 people. But you partner that Benjamin Moore paint store with a hardware store like Ace, or what was the one of them just went belly up? It wasn't Ace, it was the other one. I can't remember what, but one of the hardware stores but you partner the paint store with the hardware store, True Value. And now we're talking like, okay, we can't sell paint all the time, but we can partner the hardware with the paint. And that puts, like you said, puts more meat on the bone for those smaller guys to get into those small to mid-sized markets to where.
Well, I mean, let's look at some of the nuances though, right? So you have like Sherwin, which has their company owned stores, then they buy Valspar, and Valspar's, played a pretty significant role in those hardware spaces, right? It's between them and PPG for the most part, right? And then you have your regional paint companies.
Yeah. The regional guys are all over.
Your Florida Paints, yeah, and the regional guys they do a really great job at that customer service piece and that delivery piece, But man, going up against Sherwin is tough. I remember when I ran the store, like if you could call in an order, and I could typically have paint at your door within 2 hours. I mean, that was such an incredible model.
I'll say that was great.
Right?
That was great until they decided to do that national hub routed delivery bullshit for like 2 years. That pretty much ruined their delivery service. And then they finally thought, I don't think this is working, guys. We should go back. I think every painting contract in the world was like, about damn time. Why did it take you years to realize this?
There's a reason why Sherwin's as big as it is, and their stock price continues to grow, and they'll have another stock split because they're going to find some pretty cost cutting ways to deal with some of the market pressures.
I mean, you have to. I mean, that's just the nature of, like I tell guys that now. I mean, for instance, my father-in-law, he mentored me in this business, and he knew the guy who owned Spectrum when he was selling paint out of a storage unit back in the 80s. My father-in-law was like, it's like third customer, and never thought in a million years that Spectrum would be 110 plus stores, 12 states, I think now. And, I know some of the guys from Oklahoma where they started in Tulsa, where I was at, I know some of the guys that were with him from the beginning, and, going to the stores, know all the managers. Some would be talking like, man, it's just gotten, there's a lot of SW people that have come over now, and it's just gotten like a monster. It's not the way it used to be. And I'd be like, dude, listen, it's too big. When he had 20 guys in 5 stores is one thing, but you can't run a 20 employee 5-store operation the same as you run 100-store operation in more than 10 states. Like, it just isn't possible. Like, you have to have bigger pick. And I think a lot of people get upset when you see distributors that are growing like that. But
the alternative is, if Spectrum doesn't take over some of these businesses, they just go under. Now the community is lacking a resource, right?
Exactly.
So that's what's so challenging, right? Is you want to hate it, right? I'm a underdog kind of guy, right? I always root for the underdog. But as you get older, you're like, no, this plays an important role, a crucial role in how business operates. You need that larger company to absorb the smaller one, so that resource is still maintained within some of these communities.
That Main Street business. What's funny to me is one of my favorite podcasts to listen to is about a horse trainer. I love horses, ride horses. My son does, but this one guy, he talks about horse trainers and competitions and stuff. And I think it's almost relates to almost any industry. It's a weird dynamic that people have. That's like, screw the big guy, underdog, man, go get him, be successful, win lots of money. And then you're winning. They're like, yeah, man, keep going. And then you get to the top and they're like, you're an asshole. You're taking too much money. And you're like, what? And then it's just like this weird cycle. Like, once you hit a certain point of success, you then become the guy who everyone likes to hate. And you're like, I don't understand it. Like, a year ago, you were telling me to go for it and I went for it. And now you're telling me I'm a jerk. I'm money hungry. It's interesting. I've started noticing that since he'd like mentioned that in one of his podcasts, I've started noticing it a lot with companies, or it doesn't matter what industry it's in. It's like, it's pretty universal, and it's just an interesting dynamic, I think.
Yeah. There's got to be a villain in every story, right? Whether it's
that's true,
earned or not, right? It
yeah, it's there.
The story is better with a villain in it when you have a good guy and a bad guy. When you have a good guy and a mediocre guy.
Yeah, let's jump into Santint a little bit. So you've been in Santint for a little under 3 years, director of sales and U.S. operations. Just give us a brief history of where, I'm not mistaken, Santint, it's a European manufacturer, and you import the machines, correct?
So Santint is a global company. Its manufacturing base is based out of China.
Okay.
Most recently, they launched this brand new state-of-the-art facility. We're talking about like 1.2 million square feet, fully automated, robots running all over the place, kind of thing. And it's an incredible space. And kind of early on in the, when I came on, they were kind of going through a Santint in the U.S. was in a space where it's kind of like pretty vulnerable. Like, well, what are we doing here? What's our identity? Like, how do we compete with, the fluid management, the Heroes, the Core-Ups, right? And finally, I was like, okay, what is our approach here? And so the approach was initially when I came in, it was trying to model it after how Brazil was operating. So you go into a store, you sell into a store, and I'm like, this doesn't make sense, right? This is top down kind of an industry. So first thing we did was like, okay, let's go to the paint manufacturers, find out what their pain points are, right?
That's a good idea.
And then from there, we worked our way down to the buying groups and the distributors. And now we're at the paint store level where we offer them like, hey, look, we negotiated these incredible terms with the paint manufacturer. We're an authorized vendor. We want to offer you an alternative to, and fluid management owns like 80% of the space. And everybody else kind of
FM's got it.
FN's got it. And they're an incredible company. There's a reason why they're number one.
I mean, when I was in manufacturing, that's who I used. It's easy to get a hold of. Everyone knows their machines. I mean, it makes sense.
Who I used at Sherwin, right? And so here, and really, for us, the architectural space wasn't probably like it was what we saw as the greatest opportunity. But what we found was the easiest path to growth was our automotive side. Because I don't know if you know about the automotive side, they're still mixing paint by hand via a scale, which is crazy to me. I'm like, what do you mean? Like on architectural side, we've been mixing paint with a machine forever. Like, what's going on here? They built $1 billion industry with 2 million colors, despite all that, right?
You've got the racks that's manually rotating them, and I mean, I did my own color tinting, and that's how I did all my color matches, because I'm a little BS company and I'm not spending money on a tint machine, so I get it. But you walk into like here in Texas, you probably know them. English Color is a huge distributor in the South Central region. They're everywhere. Oklahoma, Texas, New Mexico. You walk into their store and you walk into their tint room, and it's just 10 by 12 tint room, and it's floor to ceiling 1 gallon and quart cans with the pour spout lids on them.
Right. And it's been crazy, right? Just we had to do a similar situation with how we set up on the automotive side as well. It's like, okay, well, how do we do this? Once again, top down approach. Although there's a lot more flexibility to do that one off. Like, hey, we're going to go to a small, 2 or 3 shop space and either offer them some sort of dispensing solution. So how Santint works on the automotive side is it's got the most robust paint equipment amongst all the number one in that space, specifically with its ability to have a dispensing solution for a shop of all size, right? So kind of taking that model from the architectural space where your small mom and pop shop's got the little sequential dispenser, right? Very simple, bare bones piece of equipment, all the way up to something that's really sophisticated. So we launched a proprietary product with Exalta, and I mean it's like a vending machine for paint, and it's so cool. But also, like, once again, the way we're setting up is we have a dispensing solution for a shop of all sizes, and what we know is, sometimes some shops only want to do the repair piece and paint a little bit. And other times, like, every car is getting painted to some degree. So there's a lot of variation within the market there. But here's where the statistic lies, which I think is incredible. So 6 in 10 pours was an over pour. So basically you're like, hey, this 4 ounce formula is this. I put too much because my hand slipped a little bit. So now I got to double the formula, right? Now I have to do 8 ounces.
Yep.
And 6 in 10 pours was that. And then 1 in 10 was a mistint. And sometimes you can kind of like, just like we did in the paint store, you got pretty creative. Like you can take a formula and make it to something and with enough color. But who's got the time for that? Who's got the resources?
Everybody wants it now. Yeah.
Right. When you get a gallon of paint that's costing you $800, how willing are you to try it out? You're just not. So, now that there's this dispensing solution, like, I foresee it picking up very quickly here within the US. I mean, in Europe, they're that Exalta machine, I believe they have over 300 already in shops. A little bit slow to adopt in here in the US, but we're starting to see it pick up really quickly. And I credit PPG's Moonwalk with really like bringing it to market in a way that makes sense and developing like an ecosystem. Now, it's not just the paint machine is only a piece of that. You're talking about a solid color, a spectral machine with an accurate scale, with a process centered around it, and so, bringing that to market, and not right now, I don't see every paint manufacturer having the ecosystem, I know PPG's done it. I know Exalta's done it. And you're starting to see Sherwin kind of coming along, and the other two will catch up. It's only a matter of time if they've announced it yet, right? But you see it. It's going to be incredible for the market. It's going to be incredible for the automotive side. It's really going to be incredible for those shops that need it, right? Some of these painters are paid on commission. Do you really have time to sit there and mix paint every single time? Like it's just not sustainable. This model as it is just not sustainable.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting to me, and you and I were kind of talking, and I kind of want to hit on this, was like from my time in the finishing world and doing high-end cabinet finishing, I started doing my own color because I was tired of waiting on the paint store, and I was doing solvent 2K, long story. But what I came in to find out was, one, it was phenomenal because I could mix to use. I didn't have to buy a gallon like you have to do at every paint store, which you're buying a full gallon no matter what. I could start tinting half gallons and more than a gallon at a time. You get better color consistency. But I will flip that and say what I found was, and I had a Satoris 10 or 100th, so it did 2 decimals behind, but still like 300 grams because doing gravimetric. Anything below, I mean, depending on what the color was, if it was a really light color, but man, it was pretty close to, I would say 200 grams. I could get most of them in 200 grams. Anything below that, it wasn't consistent enough. The color wouldn't get close enough as far as to produce such a small amount when you're trying to drop whatever one of the 12 colorants that you're putting in there to get there. Does this ecosystem allow you to get more precise? Because I know you'll see some paint stores that are doing like a freaking 3 or 4 ounce touch-up jar.
I mean, at this point, the technology exists where you can dispense to 1 ounce, right?
1 ounce with accuracy. Holy crap.
Now, there is a little caveat to that. The digital formula, the digital library of some of the paint manufacturers hasn't caught up yet, right? So although the technology exists, there's still some of that gap that you're going to need to that they're going to need to work on. But with and you also need scale that goes down to that precision. But now the other piece of that is you can get really precise, but now you give up on some of the production, right? And these two things kind of offset each other, right?
Yeah, you've got to find a medium or a happy.
Right. And sometimes it's just like, hey, look, I'm just going to turn off the damn scale and just keep dispensing and know that, because the industry standard is within 1/10 of a gram anyway, the machine's going to get you there almost 99 times out of 100, more than that, right? 999 times out of 1,000. But, it's one of those situations where when you're evaluating these dispensers, sometimes they're like, hey, volumetrically, we calibrated, it makes sense. You don't need the scale. To us, that's tough, right? I don't know if I'm willing to give up that level of control.
Yeah.
And so all of our pieces of equipment have that scale option built in. And we leave it up to the end user to decide whether they're going to use it or not. It's just a click of a button if you want to disable. But having that tool there, I think, is really important.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, the scale is, especially when you're getting into the European products. I mean, America, we got to be ass backwards and just do everything by volume instead of the metric system. That's like a whole hour podcast in itself, so we won't go into that one.
Sure.
But the gravimetric side, like the preciseness of these colors, when you get down to, you can go to any paint store in the U.S. right now. I don't care. Doesn't matter. And get 5 gallons of paint in singles. And anybody that tells me you're not going to get 3 different colors is completely full of shit. Like, I don't care. They like the volumetric. I don't know what, but it just cannot. I don't know if it's the preciseness. I don't care. You get 5 individual gallons, all the same color. You will have 3 different colors between those 5. You got to package them together. But when you go volume or when you go gravimetric, it doesn't matter. That's to me the crazy part. Why that adoption hasn't come sooner and why it's still out there in volumetric. It's weird.
Once again, it's an inverse relationship, right? It's production. I don't know if I would even have time. So when you have that volumetric, that gravimetric like verification, it slows it down substantially. So when our machine's just running and it's just dispensing, it's pushing out cars like all day, every day. But it's a lot more difficult when you add the scale. Like it adds that extra verification, and sometimes depending on the tolerance levels, sometimes it'll say, hey, maybe we need to go back and revisit that formula, and it does slow it down. But when you're talking about that extra verification versus the time it takes to redo that vehicle, right? Because remember, once again, you can repaint a car panel, but you also have to blend it in with the other sides, right? You have to blend it in. And if you're not blending it in, well, then the car is going to look janky. And you could do the most incredible repair on a vehicle, but if that paint finish doesn't look good, they're going to question the quality of the work. So, you want to get that color to be spot on. You want to get a good finish, product, if you will. But finally, we got to help the collision spaces get closer to that color and dial it in. And they're going to do that via the spectral. They're going to do that via an expansive color library. And now they're going to do that via the paint dispensers, and getting us really quickly to that precise formula.
Well, man, I know we're approaching that hour. Couple questions I always like to end every episode with. One, I do want to make sure you guys check out Santint. All their links are going to be down below in the show notes. Go see the equipment that they offer. If you're in the automotive world, or even if you're an OEM manufacturer, I know we've got a lot of those that wants to get into doing your own color and you want to do a little independence. Cause I'm a big proponent of, if you're going to get into tinting, like you can ask your manufacturer for advice, but do it independently so you don't get caught up with them, because that can end up costing you a whole lot of money. And it's not worth it. But now, Chris, today, this is a fun one. Chris, today, you're out to lunch. You run into 19-year-old Chris. What's the piece of advice you would give to him?
Hard work is never in vain, right? And that's
good.
Sometimes you're just questioning yourself, like, man, I'm working so hard, and there's nothing that's clicking right now, right? But the work ethic I had when I was in, bagging groceries and at the Jewel / Albertsons here in Chicago, right? I worked really hard because I wanted to get promoted to be a stock boy in the back, right? Because that's where all the cool kids were. But it was one of those situations where, I was like, what? None of this is happening now when I wanted to. But those skills, that work ethic that I developed when I was 16 to 19, right, will pay dividends to when you're in a position, I'm leading people, right? And it'll get, those skills will get better, but that hard work beats talent, and talent doesn't work hard.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of guys that I follow, and I mean, talent, there's a lot of talented people out there, but you're right. Like for 90% of the time, hard work will beat talent every day of the week.
Like I said, just 19-year-old Chris, hang in there, man. Your life will be different. I'm blessed with two, incredible family, incredible support system. My daughter is a competitive swimmer now. My son is just starting his Hapkido journey, and I always envisioned a life like this. I didn't know if I would ever get a life like this. And so blessed. I'm grateful for what I've been given thus far. I'm excited about, I got 25 years left of work, and, maybe hopefully I retire.
Who knows?
But who knows, right?
Buy a lottery ticket, you may be done sooner.
Right. But, theoretically, with the assumptions being you work till you're 65, I'm excited to see what my growth is going to be and what other industries I would be able to support. I would like to stay supporting the automotive side. I love the automotive side. I love the architectural space. And maybe we expand into the industrial space kind of thing, and I think that there's an opportunity to do all of that. And it's exciting. I'm excited.
There's a lot of growth on the industrial side. It's really in all aspects involved in architectural coating. The industrial side, I think, is industrial wood, industrial metal, 2-component. I mean, it's prime for some awesome things to happen, I think.
Yeah, and we're going to get there. I was like, look, when we set this up, this is going to be amazing. I promise you it's going to look good. And I believe, kind of like thinking about that Tesla model, right? You want to be a data company with machines, right? I think that's what's missing in these industries, right? There's just slow to adopt some of these data measures. And if we can get them all on board, I think about how efficient that we could be. Think about how competitively priced we can be, and what that can do for the market, what that can do for the industries that we support.
Yeah. Oh, I'm excited to see what you guys do at Santint. I think you guys got some cool products out there, and see how you guys move into the progress from the automotive and get more in depth and more inundated into the industrial and architectural world.
We got some stuff lined up. I'm excited about it.
Oh, nice. Final question. What's Chris outside of work, man? What's a passion? What's a love that you have that's not outside of work, so the community can get to know, you as not in the painting world? Right
now, my children, right? They're my primary focus. So my daughter does, like I said, swimming, and I grew up incredibly poor in Chicago, right? Like, so much so we didn't have a kitchen sink at a certain point in my life, right? And getting to see my daughter like win in some of her competitions, and she's in that space, and seeing her growth is incredible. And my son now, I remember going to the local park, and they had, and it wasn't expensive, but it was still out of our price range to do a karate class kind of thing, right? But seeing him, now he's in Hapkido, and he's doing stuff, and he's really excited about it. Being able to cheer for them, that's, to me, been the most incredible experience of my life.
I'm the same way. I live for my kids. I'll do anything for them. It's the weirdest thing in the world how you can want to throw something out the window and still love it so much. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
When they're pestering each other. Yeah. Man, well, Chris, I appreciate you coming on the show. It's been an awesome episode. There might be a follow-up episode once we get dug into this, because I want to dig into Santint a little more, but I don't want to keep you too much longer. But again, brother, thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate it. Make sure you guys go follow Santint. Give Chris a follow. Episode every single Monday. We're releasing them. Stay tuned for the one next week, and we'll see everybody then.
And that's a wrap on this episode of the Bearded Finisher Podcast. We thank everyone for joining. Keep hustling, keep learning, and never settle for anything less than your best. Remember, the path to perfection is a journey, not a destination. Until next time.